So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. On behalf of the Swiss Clinical Trial Organization and its CTU, the Clinical Trial Unit Network, I would like to welcome you to this online course about patient and public involvement in a nutshell. My name is Cordula Landgraf. I'm working at the SCTO as Director Communications and Stakeholder Engagement. It's a pleasure for me to introduce my co-speakers. This is Tamara Kohler. Tamara is Patient and Public Involvement Manager at the SCTO here in Bern at the Executive Office. And we have Silke Ludwig from our Clinical Trial Center in Zurich. Silke is Head of Education and Training and Head Science Communications at the STC University Hospital Zurich. So welcome both of you and thanks for accepting to speak in this course. Okay, no. So before we actually start, I have some housekeeping issues. I keep it short, but please, I would like to mention to write your questions in the chat or raise your hand via the Zoom sign, because we will have dedicated Q&A sessions and then you can address your questions. When you are not speaking, we would be happy if you could mute your microphone so we don't have any background noise. And of course, you can turn off your camera during the presentations, but when you speak, it would be a pleasure if we could see you, so please turn on your camera. For your information, this course is recorded and the recording will be published on the SCTO website after the course. Both the slides and the recording will be published. So with regard to the scope of this course, I would like to mention that it is clearly addressing the planning phase of patient and public involvement when you apply for an Swiss National Science Foundation IICT call this year. So the target audience for today are clearly clinical research professionals. This is not a course or training on implementing PPI in clinical research. For this, we would need much longer than 2 hours. So today we clearly focus on the planning phase and what you need to get your approval, your grant application through. In addition, this is not a course or we will not discuss other sections of the IICT call. So we will really stick to the PPI requirements, to the patient and public involvement requirements. What are our objectives for today? Well, we would be pleased if we conveyed the concept, the overall concept of PPI, so that you can use it to translate the PPI principles to your project, to your study, and in the end, develop a PPI plan for the IICT 2022 call. That's the objective for today. This course is actually split into 3 sections. The first one will address the overall concept. This is a little bit like setting the scene, where PPI can be used, and a little bit about what the benefits are. Then in the second part, we will address the PPI requirements in the SNSF IICT call itself, so both in the letter of intent and in the application template. After a short break, Silke will continue with some practical considerations from the viewpoint of a CTU. And we will finish with some question and answers, and I hope I keep the time, but I want to finish on time at about 11 o'clock. So that's the overview of this course today. Why are we at the Swiss Clinical Trial Organization, why are we talking about PPI? Well, PPI, the patient involvement, is one of our key strategic goals for the funding period up until 2024. That's why we are addressing this topic, and that's why we have already done some things we will show you today, but that's also why you will see additional things to come in the period running until 2024. When I talk, or when we talk of involvement today, we mean that patients and members of the public are actively engaged in clinical research projects as full partners. In contrast to this, participation is more that members of the public, they take part in a clinical trial, and usually they do so by providing the health data. So this is not PPI. What is PPI is clearly the first one, the involvement and the contribution as partners. And when I use the wording patients, I actually use the very broad definition that is also used by UParty. So patients can be an individual patient, it can be the public in general, it can be patient organization representatives, but it can also be caregivers, family members who look after a patient, patient advocates or patient experts. Altogether, I will call them PPI contributors, so those that actually provide PPI activities or who do the PPI. So just to be clear on the terminology. At the moment, I have to say that there is no internationally harmonized definition yet for patient and public involvement. You find the wording patient engagement, patient empowerment, a lot more. So we have decided to follow the definition by involve. Involve is the UK government-funded program. It runs under the National Institute for Health Research. And here, patient and public involvement in clinical research is clearly research that is carried out with or by members of the public, rather than to, about, or for them. So what I depicted in the slide before, it's an active partnership. It's not participation in a clinical trial. And what is very important for us is that the partnership approach is stressed. And I hope you can see that in the picture at the right-hand side of this slide, where the patient enters, let's say, the room where a project is discussed, and he or she is welcomed by the researcher as a colleague, as a partner. For us in clinical research, here in Switzerland at least, the PPI approach is rather a new topic. So there is the legitimate question, of course, why should we do it, or why should it be done? We can look at that question from different perspectives, from different angles. And first of all, I would look at it from an ethical perspective. Patients are those that are directly affected by the outcome of clinical research. Therefore, you can argue that they should have an influence it along the motto, nothing about us without us. And also, PPI has the possibility to support patient empowerment and addressing the right of the patient to have a voice in clinical research. It can also improve transparency when it comes to communicating the outcome of clinical research towards a wider community, to the patient community. It can also foster the dialogue between patients and the research community. And last but not least, accountability. I think here we should not forget that academic clinical research is funded by public money. So public money comes from the taxpayer, and in the end, the taxpayer are the patients, the public in general, and the reason or the benefit would be that the funding becomes more transparent, and we can be accountable. We have to be accountable for that money that we get and that we spend on research. But of course, these are the ethical, this was the ethical viewpoint, but of course there are direct benefits for your study, for your project. First of all, I would like to mention relevance, because involving patients and getting their perspective in can help to improve the relevance of your research agenda, your research question. So for example, patients can help you identify the research question that matters most to them and help you to prioritize your research agenda. There is also a growing literature that supports the statement that it has a positive influence, that PPI has a positive influence on recruitment. So patient PPI contributors could help you connect with the appropriate patient community and thus increase your recruitment to the study, or help to define a good recruitment strategy. And also patients could advise you on the feasibility of the process that you are describing in your protocol. Maybe there are some hurdles that you have not seen for patients to really participate in a study, and that could be voiced out by a PPI contributor. And of course, transparency could be improved so that a PPI contributor helps you to disseminate study results to a wider public. These are just some examples. Of course, you could come across more benefits, but I would like to mention the most important ones here at this course. There are different methods how you can do patient and public involvement. So for actively involving patient, you can apply different methods. When you choose your method, it is recommended that you take into consideration the level of involvement. And the level of involvement can actually categorized in the categories 1 to 4 that you see on this slide here. So the first category would be, number 1, providing information. The patient contributor provides information about his disease, about how it feels to live with the disease, maybe about how it is to have side effects. Yeah, you can imagine more possibilities. Then a step further would be providing advice. Here the patient, the PPI contributor, responds to specific questions or provides general advice. It would be maybe advice on a question you have regarding feasibility of your study. Even a step higher, number 3 would be joint decision making, where the PPI contributor has a say at decision making level. So you do a co-decision. He has the power, or he has the voting rights, maybe at an advisory board or panel. And the 4th category on the top of this here would be leadership, so that a PPI contributor takes over a specific part of your project, of your initiative, or even maybe leads a subgroup or chairs a subgroup. Different possibilities are imaginable. So how can you find your PPI contributor? This is also a question we quite often get. And to be honest to you, for the moment, we have to say there is no one-stop shop at the moment. So there is not an organization or an institution where you can go to and they find your PPI contributor and do the matchmaking for you. So for the moment, our recommendation is that you first align internally, that you go to your CTU, to your clinical trial unit at your hospital and ask for their support. You could also approach, if you are a principal investigator, you could approach patients you already know from participations at previous studies. You could also look at identifying and contacting relevant patient organizations. Maybe if you have a study in a specific therapeutic indication, you look for a patient organization in this therapeutic field. You could post a call for interest on your website or on social media channels. There is also UParty Switzerland, the European Patient Academy. You could ask for support here, and they would then ask their network. So look in the network if somebody is interested to contribute. Of course, you can also contact us. That's also possible. Or a tool that UParty has developed is the UParty Connect matchmaking platform. However, here I have to say this is a quite new tool. It's a specific matchmaking tool, so it's a very nice tool, but for the moment, there are not so many Swiss patient contributors in this database. So for the moment, it's more focused on Europe, on the European Union, to be more precise. And last but not least, you can check our PPI mapping. And for this, Tamara will tell you a little bit more just in a few minutes. Whenever you approach one of these contacts, it would be helpful, or it would be necessary that you clearly specify your research project in lay language, so that the patient that is considering to participate is really aware of what the project is. You should also identify the role of the PPI contributor, what you expect from him or from her, and specify the skills you need. Can it be a naive patient, or would it be needed, or would you need a patient that has already some skills or knows something about research? And you should provide information on the timing and the amount of work, as well as on remuneration. So do you compensate for the work? Do you compensate for the PPI activity? And do you reimburse travel expenses if there is a meeting face-to-face? We have already done this course once in April, and here we got the question, it would be helpful to have a template for all this information, and I can tell you that we agreed to take that on board. So the SCTO will develop a template that we will then also publish on our website, which can be used freely, of course. And with this, I would like to hand over to my colleague Tamara, who will tell you a little bit more where you can find information. Tamara, please.
Thank you very much, Cordula. So welcome also on my side, from my side. And as already mentioned by Cordula, we have some resources available, and we do have a dedicated patient and public involvement website where you can find, for example, if you could go to the next slide, Cordula, the PPI fact sheet, where we compiled information about the overall concept of PPI, the benefits and challenges, and how it can be incorporated in clinical trials. This document is available in 3 languages, in German, French, and English. And then in close collaboration with the Swiss National Science Foundation, we have also developed a guide for researchers. The aim of this document is to support you as researchers to identify PPI opportunities that are effective and meaningful. Also, the scope here is the planning phase, and it's not a comprehensive guidance for the implementation of the PPI approach. And as Cordula already mentioned, it's very important, there is no one size fits all. You have to decide what fits best within your project. Included in the document is also a dedicated section on potential pitfalls with examples what does not qualify as PPI, what should be avoided, and how you could improve it. We also have a graphical overview of possibilities for PPI included, starting on the right side on the top with identification of research questions, followed by study design and funding application. And here you will hear later on more details and concrete examples again. Then management and study process, data analysis, dissemination and implementation, and last but not least, the evaluation of PPI activities and what impact they have on the overall project. Another document I would like to mention is the SCTO remuneration policy for PPI activities. This is also a document that is published on our website and available to consult. We are of the opinion that in order to implement PPI in a sustainable way, a clear commitment to remunerate PPI contributors is needed. Therefore, our policy outlines our commitment for reimbursement of expenses, such as travel and accommodation for meetings, as well as compensation for PPI contributors for their work. This compensation model is a blended model based on two criteria. The first criteria is the level of involvement, and you have already heard that in an earlier slide. There are the levels 1, 2, 3, 4. And the second criteria is based on the skills and capacities PPI contributor needs to fulfill the PPI activity. Just to mention, this is a policy and certainly not a guideline, so it should serve as a resource, as a reference document whenever you need it, but it is of course not mandatory to use. And then also, if you're interested in more specific case studies or would like to know what else is going on in Switzerland, we recommend that you have a look at the Regulatory Affairs Watch from our SCTO platform. Our October issue was dedicated to PPI. It includes a case study, for example, from the Geneva University Hospitals about their PPI model, but also, for example, from the DKF Basel. And it does also include a deep dive into a regulatory perspective. Next slide, please. So I would also like to give you a short introduction to the PPI mapping that has been mentioned by my colleague Cordula. So in the first step, we wanted to identify and characterize PPI initiatives and projects in Switzerland. So the scope of this initiative was clearly the academic clinical research. And why did we do that? We wanted to establish the status quo to avoid duplication of effort and leverage resources for the next steps. We did send a survey to both patients and research professionals through our network, via our website, and also social media channels. Based on the results from this survey, we were able to identify a total of 45 initiatives and projects spread over the whole of Switzerland. And we have published that information beginning of April on our website. Next slide, please. Where you can find an overview of the identified PPI initiatives and projects, but also more details about the individual initiatives and projects, such as the organization that is involved, where it takes place, as well as the level of PPI involvement and in which phase of the project the PPI involvement takes or took place. Having said that, this is certainly not a completed and comprehensive list and will be updated on a regular basis. All this information is available in the languages German, French, and English. And if you come across and see that a project or an initiative is not yet listed on that website, please feel free to reach out to me to share that information with me so we can add it to the list. And with that, we think it's a first time for questions, and we are happy to hear your questions, either via the chat or please also raise your hand. Thank you.
So there is no question for the moment in the chat, but maybe somebody would like to address the question verbally. I don't see any hands up. Wait a few minutes. If there are no questions, I interpret this that we continue, right? Okay. So then I'm happy to continue with the second part of this course. And here, as I said in the introduction, we will look at the Investigator Initiated Clinical Trial grant for 2022 and what the PPI requirements are here for this year. So actually, it's the second time that the Swiss National Science Foundation addresses PPI and that you need to fulfill the requirements. So for both parties, both for the SNSF, for the Swiss National Science Foundation, and for you, for the research community, it's new territory we are embarking on. Having said this, not everything will be perfect right from the beginning. What is important from our side, and this also holds true for the Swiss National Science Foundation, is that there is a start, that we begin with PPI, and we acknowledge that we need to get experience with it, and based on that experience, we learn and may adjust our processes, may adjust our learning curve. This year, what is new is that you have to address PPI both in the letter of intent as well as in the application itself. The Swiss National Science Foundation also follows the broad definition of patients. So patients are also members of families, caregivers, representatives of patient organizations. So actually, they follow the U-Party definition, what was mentioned in the introduction. The scope for PPI relates to the whole life cycle of your project. So coming back to the graphic that Tamara presented, it's actually from phase 1, when you start planning your study, up until phase 6, where you evaluate, not your study, but you evaluate your PPI activities. What is new this year is the so-called preparatory grant. Here you have the possibility to ask for a grant of up to 5,000 Swiss francs prior to submitting your actual grant proposal. And this grant is specifically for patient and public involvement in the planning phase. So what you do to address PPI prior to submitting the grant proposal. The objective is to support you in all activities during which patient representatives provide input in the development of the grant application, including, of course, the study protocol. So this money is for compensation for the time spent by the PPI contributor on providing input, giving advice, or also for the reimbursement you need for travel costs or expenses you have for accommodation, or if you organize a face-to-face meeting. What you need to do to get that money is you have to outline it in the patient engagement plan in the letter of intent. And we will look at that a little closer just in a few minutes. Regarding the timeline and the process for this preparatory grant, you know that you have to submit the letter of intent latest at the 20th of May. So this is here the first column. For the preparatory grant, the SNFS will open the grant submission for the preparatory grant 1st of June, and this will be on my SNF on this portal. And then you can submit your request. Until the end of June, the SNF will inform you if it is granted. So you would then, in a positive case, receive the grant, and the grant would run from beginning of July until the end of October. Again, this is related to your IICT call proposal, which you have to submit until the 1st of November latest. So you actually have then 4 months for PPI activities to prepare for your grant submission. Coming back to the letter of intent and the patient engagement plan. This is what you have to provide. This is information you have to provide to fulfill the requirements. It's a tabular overview, and in this tabular overview, you have four rows actually. First of all, First of all, you describe the activity. So the PPI activities you are proposing in the planning phase. So actually, this is what you do to involve patients. Then you describe the concrete task for the PPI contributor, what you expect from them. So what the PPI contributor is expected to do. And please be as precise as possible. That is very helpful for those that evaluate your PPI proposals. Then you specify in the next column, you specify the objective of your activity. So why you would like to involve patients, what you expect as benefit, added value. And then comes the section I mentioned before, the budget. This budget is clearly just for the preparatory grant. It has nothing to do with the budget you submit later for the whole project. So here the budget is for getting the 5,000 Swiss franc, and you specify the amount of money you need for the activities of PPI for the planning, in the planning phase now, in these 4 months prior to 1st November. So coming back to the graphic, that means that you are now in the first part. So you are in the part identification of research questions and study design and funding. This is now the focus for the letter of intent. Let's look at some examples. I think then it may help and it gets clearer what you should enter in this table. The first example could be that you include patients to identify research questions. As activity, you would specify how you consulted with local or national patient representatives XYZ, and please specify with whom you got into contact. And you specify the scope, you specify the form, maybe you got into contact via an interview or it was an online survey, whatever you use, you specify it here. Then you describe the concrete task for the PPI contributor, what you expect from them. So, oh, sorry, sometimes this moves. Okay, you provide, let's say in this example, the most reasonable task would be that the PPI contributor provides advice and input on the research question, taking into account their experience living with the disease, having the condition. That's what you specify in the second column. And then again, the objective: ensure that the research question is relevant to patients and reflects their need. That would be what you could enter here. Regarding the budget, you have to consider, of course, depending on what you decide upon, if you do an online survey, the time that is needed by the PPI contributor to fill in the survey. You should define an hourly rate for the compensation. If you have a meeting, maybe you need money for booking a room, and all these things should be entered here. So compensation for the activity itself, but also reimbursement of travel, hotel, or costs that you have for planning this activity or performing it. First example. Second example could be that you consult with a patient organization, with a patient representative on the endpoints in your study. And the consultation would be in the regard that you ask if the endpoints you propose, if they are meaningful from a patient perspective. The patient contributor, the PPI contributor, would provide advice and input on the proposed study endpoints, maybe regarding the general health improvement, or is there improvement of quality of life from his perspective. Again, you specify the objective. Ensure that the endpoints are meaningful, appropriate to answer the research questions. It could be that your therapy or drug that you test has a potential to be a game changer and meeting an unmet medical need. Then, of course, you could elaborate on this here in this column. Again, the budget. I think I don't go into detail here anymore. That's quite clear now. A last example for the letter of intent. Of course, you could also involve patient for your lay summary of your study concept. You remember when you submit your grant proposal, 1st of November, there you have to provide a study concept for the general public. And of course, you could consult with patient representatives when you draft a summary to make sure it is understandable, that it is readable for the general public. The objective here would be to increase transparency, foster the dialogue between public and the research community, and also help to make this summary understandable. Again, for the budget, here you might need a meeting. You calculate how much money you would need for it. So regarding the budget, we received quite some questions on how should we calculate the amount of compensation. So what is appropriate to pay? And my colleague Tamara has already mentioned it. The SCTO has decided to follow a policy, or has drafted a policy in this regard. And we follow a blended model to come to compensation. We consider the level of involvement. So is it the involvement, does it take place at the level of providing information, or is it maybe joint decision making? But then we take into account a second criteria, and this is the skills and the resources or the capacities that are needed if you are a patient PPI contributor. So in here you could, let's say you could classify into medical experience, systems experience, methodological experience, or personal framework, experience with a special disease area. You rate the skills you need as low, intermediate, or high. And then the higher the level of involvement and the higher the skills and resources you need, the higher the amount in Swiss franc for your compensation. That's what is behind our model. And I think it's better if I show you immediately the next slide with an example. The example is for a PPI contributor that reviews study material, for example, an informed consent or draft protocol, and provides feedback. So here clearly this work would fall into the level of involvement 2, providing advice, reviewing something and giving feedback. The amount of compensation here could range between 55 to 100 Swiss franc per hour. And this amount of money, or this span, actually is based on what I could find in the literature and also on my limited own experience. So that is not carved into stone. That is something based on current experience and knowledge. And then, of course, you take into account the second criterion, the skills and capacities that the PPI contributor should have. Do you rate them as low? Do you rate them as intermediate or high? And then in our example, you could conclude that in this case, it's reasonable and appropriate to pay 90 Swiss franc per hour. Of course, I admit this is not a real calculation. It's not something on a quantifiable level. So you don't have an equation where you enter your numbers and something comes out and this is it. Yeah, it's not on a quantitative level, but it takes two important criteria into account, at least that's our opinion: the level of involvement and the capacities, the skills you need. And in the document that Tamara mentioned, our policy on remuneration, you actually find a tabular overview where it is listed what medical information might be needed and the criteria for low, intermediate or high. So I don't go into detail here. I just would like to refer to our document on the website. And this tabular overview has been done by U-Party. It's not SCTO work, but we got the permission to use it and to base our remuneration on this. I think I stop here because there might be questions now, and there is something in the chat I see. So let's start. There is one from Isabel. Isabel, would you like to speak up and read your question aloud?
Yes, well, hi, I'm Isabelle Guilloret from the CTU Lausanne. I hope that everybody can hear me. It was not really a question, it was just a comment, you know. The timelines to prepare the grant application for an IICT code are pretty short. And according to your scheme showing the different timelines, then I would just really suggest people to start preparing their research grant as soon as they finished their letter of intent, because it will take time. So the scheme you show on the screen is mostly to know a bit on when you can ask for the budget for this PPI support, but also when you're going to receive some money, or at least first the reply from the SNSF regarding this PPI support, and the money you could receive. But at the same time, please do not forget to continue to work on your research plan, because this is only one part of your proposal. You know? So it's just a comment to say that yes, don't stop and wait on the 1st of July to start writing or preparing or discussing with your colleagues and partners to prepare your grant application.
Thanks a lot, Isabel. Very valid comment. And of course, you are the ones who are on the spot and you know best how to plan and organize around the timelines. Thanks a lot for your comment.
And I have a second comment regarding this grant, PPI grant somehow. Yes, this year we have this wonderful opportunity to have proposed by the SNSF 1,000 Swiss francs to support this PPI activities. But please remember that there are also some activities which are free of charge. And this is something you should also consider when you plan to discuss with patients or proxies or people in public and so on. You know, you can really ask support and feedback from many different people, and some of them are really keen in helping you, supporting your project for free.
Mm-hmm. That's true, yes. We also specify in our policy, Isabel, that of course compensation is, to decide for compensation is absolutely free and voluntary. So you could also decide to do PPI activities without getting compensated, but there is the possibility to get it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. And there is a question by Eric. Eric, would you like to speak up? Oh, your microphone does not work, unfortunately. So I read your question aloud. How do you plan quantify a budget? Let's say difficult in letter of intent at this stage. Well, yes, as I said, it's an estimation you give here, and you plan as best as you can. Would you like to comment on it, Silke, because you wrote something to Eric and I can only read the first part of it?
Oh, I just wrote to Eric that is estimation, which is asked for in the letter of intent. So it in the course of planning, it's sure it will change and it will be being or becoming more precise. So that's all what I wrote.
Okay, yeah, I see it now. Yeah, it's estimations and as best as can be done at the moment, right? Okay, any further questions until up here? I don't see any hands raised.
No further questions so far.
Okay, then I would continue with the second part, with the proposal itself. So in the proposal itself, you have actually two tabular overviews you have to provide. The tabular A, the activities you did before the proposal submission. So actually what we discussed just now for the letter of intent. And then table B, the activities you plan during and after your project, your trial. And how does that look like? Actually, for the first table, the activities that you have already done, that have already taken place before the proposal submission. Here again, activity, role, objective. And here you can refer to your letter of intent. The fourth part of this table, that's something which is rather, which you have to address now. You have to specify how these preparatory PPI activities influenced the study you submit or the grant you submit. So you describe the feedback, the insights you gained from having involved patients and how you integrated this in your proposed study. This has to be provided in table A. Table B are the activities you plan now, during, after your trial. And here you have the different phases that is related to our graphic again, management and study process, data analysis, dissemination of and implementation and evaluation. And evaluation here means the evaluation of the impact, the benefit of PPI. You describe the PPI activities now you are planning to do during and after your study. You identify the role, the concrete tasks for your PPI contributor, what you expect from them, and you specify why you involve patients, what you expect as benefit added value. That's similar to the letter of intent, but now for your project study itself. So now, referring back to the graphic, we are addressing or focusing on the 4 remaining parts: management process, data analysis, dissemination, and evaluation. Again, I would like to provide some examples. So you might imagine, or you might want to include patients as a member of a safety board or a steering committee or an advisory board. This would relate to the management and study process as phase. You would describe the activity in the column here under activity. If you include him as a full member, you specify the board, what the board does, or the steering committee, whatever you choose, and the role of the PPI contributor. And here in our case, it would be to provide advice or input or recommendations on all questions or issues that are put to the board, to the committee. The objective here would be that you ensure that the patient perspective is taken into consideration for all questions, issues that arise during your study. Another example could be patient and public involvement when you summarize your research results in lay language, what is currently quite a hot topic under the buzzword lay summary. This would address the phase dissemination and implementation. Here as activity, you could specify how you consulted with your local or a national patient representative, XYZ you specify, and how you got feedback on your lay summary of the research result. So the patient contributor would review a draft of the summary. You could also decide that he writes part of it. That's up to you to specify. The objective would be to ensure that the lay summary of your research result is readable, understandable for the general public, increasing transparency. That's all which goes under the objective. Lay summary of research results is already mandatory here in Switzerland if you have a clinical trial for a medical device. The new ordinance on clinical trials with medical devices requires this in Switzerland. In the EU, there is already also the requirement for medicinal product. This is not yet in Switzerland a mandatory legal requirement, but we expect that it also will come when the ordinance, the human research ordinance, is revised. And finally, the third example, monitoring and evaluating PPI. So here you would specify how you plan to monitor the PPI activities throughout your study, and maybe which approach you choose. Do you more focus on the formative approach? You want to improve the involvement process itself? Is it more a summative approach where you want to demonstrate the impact of the involvement itself, or a mixed approach? That's also possible. The PPI contributor would participate, for example, at feedback meetings, debriefing meetings, at certain milestones of your study, and you would document this activity, this assessment. The objective could be to improve the involvement process itself, demonstrate impact of the involvement on the long term, and be prepared on how you do PPI in future. So lessons learned, that's also something which is important here under objective in this phase. We've looked at several examples. And again, I would like to stress, as we come to an end of this part, there is no one size fits all. So it's actually you who have to look at your study, who have, you know best what you are doing and what you are proposing. So you have to decide what best fits with regard to PPI. What does make most sense to include? Not all possibilities that I presented might make sense for your specific study. And I can tell you the SNFS will not expect all of them. We are starting this project together, SNFS and the research community. And it's clear we need to learn, they need to learn, but it's a start, and yeah, hopefully we learn by it, and we based on our experience, we can improve the process. But please don't worry if your PPI does not address all what we covered here today. That's not what is expected. The best as you can, and that what makes most sense. That's what actually, yeah, that's the expectation also from the SNSF. Okay. And with this, I would like to open up for questions again before we go into a little break. Do you have any questions on this second part regarding the proposal itself? Isabel, please.
Yeah. Yes, please, Cordula, could you please specify the condition for the use of the 5,000 Swiss francs regarding the phase where it could be used? By that, I mean, this is a fee that could be used for the preparation of the application, or can it be used after that, or how to have in the final budget all these PPI activities mentioned?
Yeah, the 5,000 Swiss franc is just for the preparatory phase, so just for the planning of your PPI activities and what you do up until the grant submission. So just for this period, maybe I go back to the slide. Sorry. So as you can see here on the slide, just for the green period. Yeah. If there is something that, well, if you don't use something of the grant, it's not that you can take it over. Yeah, you have to pay it back. And what you do during your clinical trial regarding PPI, this has to be addressed in the grant, in the budget you submit here on the 1st of November. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, it was just some precisions for maybe people listening to your presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, and you might see here's when you submit the budget 1st of June, the SNF will decide until end of June. If you start activity here in June, I clarified with the SNSF that you can also submit invoices in this period, and it will then fall under the grant which you receive later. But here, this is also included.
So maybe here I have a question regarding the modalities for being paid for that, because you mentioned that you can submit invoices to the SNSF. Is it really the process that will be used, or would the SNSF will give the money to the researcher and then the researcher can use it, or how will it work?
This is a very specific question. I cannot answer regarding the process they will propose in the end. This is something they will make available or inform the applicants when they have submitted, when the applicant has submitted the letter of intent, or maybe publish it on the website. I have no information about that yet.
Okay, thank you.
There's a question by Jesus. Would you like to speak up? You cannot talk. Why is this? It's strange. So I read it aloud. Should the plan to assess and manage economic, intellectual conflict of interests of patients be detailed in the grant proposal? So, okay, you are in a room with other people talking. Okay, sorry. Do you mean the grant proposal itself, or is it the preparatory grant you are referring to? So could you please specify, and then we go back. Grant proposal itself. Yes, you have to specify how you deal with this question. Okay, I see there's another question. Can the initial 5,000 Swiss francs be used to pay project management activities to organize the PPI aspects? Well, in my view, yes, but you have to specify it in the budget. Make it clear for what you use the money, and it's then the SNSF who decides. Okay. Any further questions? Michaela, you have raised your hand.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just wondering how many people will receive the preparatory grant, 5,000 francs, compared to those that will actually receive the funding for the whole call?
Mm-hmm. That's a question. Sorry, I cannot answer. This is something we would need to address to the SNSF itself.
Okay.
I will provide you with an email address at the end of our course where you can put those specific questions.
But do you think there is a correlation between those that will receive the preparatory grant aid compared to those that will actually be funded?
Really, I have not enough experience to provide you with an answer here, but
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would address it to the SNF, please. There's a question from Romana. Romana, would you like to speak up, or would you like that I read it aloud? So the question is, do you have an example how to demonstrate an impact of involvement? Romana, unfortunately not yet, because we are just starting with this PPI approach and concept. There is something in the literature. If you are interested, there, the UK, who's much more advanced in PPI, they have already articles about it, but I don't have for our projects, no. But it is important, Romana, that we start from the very beginning to monitor these activities so that we have something to base our assessment on to show an impact in the long run. And there's another question from Annette. Project leader may need help to organize all around PPI. This should be covered, not? I presume you mean if you can include it in the budget for the preparatory grant. I think yes. Really, in the preparatory grant for the 5,000 Swiss franc, you specify everything, every cost you need to do this PPI activities prior to the grant proposal. Of course, it is then the SNSF who decides about the grant. If you get the full 5,000, yeah, this I cannot say, but. Any other question? Thank you, Isabel, for reminding that the 5,000 Swiss franc is for the PPI and not for the PG. What do you mean by PG project?
No, sorry, PM, it was project management, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, the 5,000 is only the preparatory grant, or?
So when you say preparatory grant and PPI, is it you're talking about the same thing? No, I don't think so.
The preparatory grant is just for PPI. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's just for PPI activities.
Okay.
It's not for any other activities that you need maybe to prepare your grant for the whole project, the whole study. It's related to PPI. But of course, maybe you need to do something with regard to a meeting, you need project management to do something. And this, of course, can be integrated, but it needs to have a relation to PPI. Okay. Any further questions? Otherwise, we would break for 15 minutes. And I would like to ask you to be back at 10:20, please. Is that okay? So see you back at 10:20.
I think it's 10:20, and I think in a timely manner I'd like to start. And any question arose during the break, we could start with a question. If not, I would like to continue. Nothing in the chat, but maybe someone. Okay. So after talking about a lot of PPI, how it's done, how it could be done, I'd like to have a very brief talk about which support we are doing in Zurich for the IICT calls and project requests itself. And but I like to invite the other CTUs where members of the CTUs are in the audience right now to interrupt me or to additional comment on things they are doing if they're doing it differently from Zurich. So just a short introduction from Zurich. No, it works as a bit verzögert. I don't know the English expression right now. Okay, this is our structure. You can see we do have specialized units for all services, all project aspects are covered. So you could ask for single unit service, but you can use for multi-unit services. So for your convenience, we developed a project coordination which can be reached and does the coordination within the CTC. So you don't need to go to every single unit and ask there for their support. This is the thing we developed this year, especially for researchers for the IICT calls. So please send your request at the indicated email address, and all requests will be processed as we receive these requests. And I included in this slide the timelines, which are in line with the timelines from the SNSF. And to give us ample time, we need time, working hours or working days, to give you an elaborated answer to your request. So therefore, we decided to have those indicated deadlines for Zurich. So the first one for the letter of intent passed already, but if you still have a request, please feel free to send them. We are trying to process it as fast as we can, but it can be, it takes time. So that's the thing Isabel indicated too. If you have your letter of intent submitted, don't stop working on your proposal or on the preparatory grant. Just you have to continue, as the IICT grants or proposals, projects are very complex. So you really need this time to have a good proposal and have the possibility to get the grant. So therefore, we have 50 working days for the letter of intent and 25 working days. As is more detailed, you have to have a data management plan and such. So that's why we need this time to do so. What have we done in the context of PPI in Zug? As Cordula said, we are all on the learning curve. We are all at the beginning, not as England or where else. So in Zurich, we have PPI activities since 21, and as we had our first master student, Deborah Eberle, which her thesis done about PPI, what is in Switzerland, what activities are already taken place or in order to start. And she was even part of the PPI mapping working group. So in November last year, we had as a starting point for us and symposium about PPI and had fruitful discussions with researchers, with patients, what they're expecting us to do. And therefore, we decided to continue with our own project, the proactive PPI involvement in clinical research. We started off the first month by training our personnel about PPI of implementation size and lay summaries. And now I like to talk a little bit more about the project. As you see, or as I indicate, there are 4 columns, which indicates kind of sub-projects, but are not, be separated as such, because they are kind of connecting. So we are about to have a PPI platform, or a platform where research is explained in lay language, and we are looking for user testing within this month. So this is the first step we've done. The next one we are looking at is a patient-centric general consent. So we are about to develop information in lay language to describe to the patients and public what is research with data and biosample and what is a consent. Then we have already an existing kind of recruiting platform where researcher can submit their project when they are looking for participants. This will be extended to a platform where after termination of the study, lay summaries of the trial outcomes can be published. As Cordula says, for the medical devices already mandatory in Switzerland. Last but not least, we are about to develop a matchmaking point, which is lacking in Switzerland. And this is as IICT did too, or we kind of copy IICT. We are having a self-registration for patients and interested parties to indicate their willingness to take part in the research project. And on the other hand, there are possibilities for researchers to submit their project in lay language and search for these contributors. As I said, we have a first event for public and patient, which take place in May the 18th. So where we all invite all interested parties to come along and test the homepage and go into a workshop with us about patient-centric consent and hopefully register for research project and to indicate their willingness to be contributors. So yeah, that's what we've done so far. And we do have patients working with us. We do have patient organization working with us. But at the moment, we don't have, as Cordula said, a one-stop point where we just said, okay, you need such and such, here it is. So we even need to shop around as you do, but we would like to support you in that way. So that's what I would like to say about the practical organizational things we do in Zurich, and I'm happy to take questions. Any other questions about, not about what we are doing in Zurich, about anything about PPI?
Silke, I would have a question regarding the public workshop you are organizing, or the open door on the 18th of May. Do you need to register for this, or are patients able to come just if they feel they have time and would be interested?
You don't need to register. This is just free. There's no registration mandatory. We will use mask and take care of the distance, but you don't need to register. Mm-hmm. Everybody can come along.
And this, there's some information on it on your website, so that we could distribute to IICT also?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on our website.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, the next steps, what we are doing, we are planning workshops with researchers, but as you know, it needs time for do something good and have something ready for the researchers. That's right.
And the PPI platform that you mentioned, so this web page, as I understand, will it go live then on the 18th of May, or?
This is what we are discussing with the web team of the hospital right now. If it's just is it live already, or is it just using? But after the event and after the input from public and patients is going to be on the website of the university hospital. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Any further questions? I don't have anything in the chat. I'll just check again.
There's one hand raised, but I don't know if it's.
Yeah, Jesus, would you like to speak up?
Yes, now I can speak. Thank you. So my name is Jesus. I am working as a systematic reviewer at Zurich University Hospital. And I was wondering, Silke, if you have any experience of involving patients to choose the outcomes of your clinical trials. Because normally in systematic reviews, we hold meetings with the patients and we involve them to choose, for example, mortality as an outcome instead of cholesterol levels, no? Because it is more relevant for patients. Do you have any experience on this?
No, unfortunately not, no. But you could contact our regulatory affairs directly. I can send you the email in the chat and you could ask them if they have recommendations.
Okay.
Right
Perfect,
now, I can't think of anything right instantly, but yeah, just write them the email. They get back to you as soon as they can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? You can now actually raise your questions for the whole of this course. It's not restricted to Silke's part. Anything that you would like to discuss, or maybe you missed something in this course that you would like to raise now. Yeah, again, please.
Yes, so thank you. I have a question about authorship of manuscripts. If we involve patients in our projects and they receive some economic compensation, is there any plan on how to, if they will be authors of the manuscript of the, for example, of the clinical trial? Do you have experience of this? How do you normally deal with authorships of patients?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
No, that they will have a place in the manuscript as an author, or we will only acknowledge their contribution in the acknowledgement section of the manuscript.
On my, this is my personal opinion. I think they should be author too.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know this from the European Union. They are always included there as authors as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments, maybe from the other CTUs, what they are doing for the IICT course in Bern or in Lausanne? Okay. Isabel?
Yeah, just to mention for people here in Lausanne. So as you in Zurich, we are supporting researchers to prepare their grant application. And as we have to work pretty rapidly. That's why we also ask people to contact us as soon as possible, even a bit before the deadline that you submitted, presented for Zurich. Now regarding PPI, we do not have yet a conference or other information to provide to researchers. We are working on that, and it will be certainly coming in the coming months or for the next call next year.
Yeah, that's all. I think we're all on the same stage, more or less. So yeah.
Hopefully, we have the SCTU documents that are available now online. So we would refer all the researchers to read them carefully, because they contain a lot of information.
Yeah, definitely. It's very good work they have done. Yeah, thanks to the SCTU.
Welcome.
You're welcome. And maybe this is a good point to mention that we will continue with a SCTO PPI working group, And this working group will, the next step will be to develop some templates, like a template for an agreement, an arrangement to clarify roles, responsibilities, and also regarding the compensation. These are templates that you can then use in your day-to-day work. So we hope that we can be of help in the future as well with concrete templates. And of course, the establishment of the PPI hub, as we call it, that's also our goal until the end of the funding period 2024. But we will keep you updated, certainly, both on our website and as well as in this PPI working group.
I have another one practical remark for all of you who done or are willing to submit an IICT call, and for the first time, you have to have these My SNF. This is the portal. You have to ask or prepared it because it takes 5 days if you get the access. You really have to take care of this too. So that, which means, you know, if you want to submit under 20s, you have to have the registration that started at least at the 15th. And I'm not sure if it's really calendar days or working days. I suppose it could be working days. So just to remind to everybody who is done or who are willing to do this at the first time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Silke, for sharing this. Yeah, that's of practical importance.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, if there are no questions anymore, I would like to inform you that if you have specific questions to the Swiss National Science Foundation that I could not answer or that we could not answer during this call, I think we had two questions, please address them to Mrs. Deborah Studer at the SNSF. So you find her email address here, and I was in contact with her before this course, and she's well aware that there might be questions coming to her, and they are very supportive. So please make use of it if something is unclear. We hope that we can walk the talk together with you. Silke mentioned it again, we start with the PPI. It's important we keep going and we learn by our experience. This course has been the second time we are doing it. We have done one before in April, but actually the approach that we provide a free course for the IICT course for the PPI requirement is quite new. So we would like to get your feedback. Is it helpful for you? Did you miss something? Yeah, we would appreciate to get this either via the chat now, or you can also write us an email. And with this, I would like to thank all of our participants for their attention, for the fruitful discussion we had. And of course, a big thank you to Silke and Tamara for their presentation. Yeah, as I said, the presentations as well as the recording will be put on our website, and you as a participant, you will be informed of this. So enjoy the rest of the day, and I wish everybody a nice weekend already now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.